all having a good conference so far. So yeah, my name is James. I work for a pen testing firm up in Seattle called Anvil Secure. That's the slide design, and I guess that's really all you need to know about me. I have a lot of material, and I tend to kind of talk fast, so if you want to find the slides to follow along, you can check the talk details in the BSides schedule page. But this talk is about a couple run-ins with the DMCA and a few other stories that all revolve around a couple implementation quirks in GitHub. And since this is a BSides audience, you probably know what GitHub is, but I mean, you never know for sure. So in case you need it, Git is a version control system for text files. You put these files in a special folder called a repository, and each version you make is called a commit. It has a cryptographic hash instead of a version number, and this is really helpful for various reasons. And one of the reasons is you can have multiple branches of history, and that's really helpful for, you have like one product and different teams working on different features. They can work on their own stuff without having to constantly sync with each other or step on each other's toes. Once they're done with their work, they can merge into the default branch, and yeah, that's Git. GitHub is probably the most popular place to host Git repositories. Anyone can view or download a public repository, and only authorized users can push commits to a repository. That's you and anyone you authorize. So if you want to suggest changes to a repository you're not in, you click that fork button, which makes a copy in your account, and it has a link back to the original, as you can see in the top left, to the upstream, as we call it, and you make your commits in your fork, you submit a pull request to say, hey, merge in my changes, and yeah, that's how it goes. So if you needed that hopefully that was helpful, and for everyone else, you caught the part where I lied, right? Because it turns out the fork button does not make a copy, because GitHub forks are all the same repo as the upstream. They all share the same objects and stuff, and of course you already knew that because GitHub has this documented, and everyone reads the docs. And if you were here for the previous talk about TJ actions, they did touch on this a little bit. I'm not going to talk about CI/CD stuff so much, but it's the same stuff under the hood. But yeah, this might be a bit to wrap your head around if you haven't seen this before. So I'll start simple with the first time I ever, I guess, messed around with this feature. There was this tool called Wappalizer. It's still around. It's just a little bit different now. It's a website browser extension that tells you what tech a site is built in. And this is really helpful for pen testing because you might want to find some low-hanging fruit, like, hey, update Nginx, or you've got a jQuery version somehow still that has known vulnerabilities in it, and you can see if it's exploitable. So something that was really cool about Wappalizer is that it had local detection rules that ran in your browser. And so that meant you didn't have to wait for a scraper to come by and update a site. You could run it live, and it also would check, like, it ran in your browser, so you can check non-public sites, like UAT sites or internal sites, stuff like that. It was probably the second tool I was introduced to after Burp Suite. I found it really helpful at my first pen testing job, but eventually just the nature of my work changed. I changed jobs, and I didn't need to use it for a while, so I ignored it for a while. But then a few years later, I finally had an engagement where it made sense to try to use Wappalizer. So I went to the GitHub repo for it and was going to download it, but I guess it was gone for some reason. And it turns out that the author deleted the Wappalizer repository. And this was kind of sad, but I get it. I mean, corporations, they see open source code and they're like, hippity hoppity, that code's not my property. And he was trying to, this was kind of a solo gig. I mean, it was open source, so there were contributions, but he was writing most of the code. He was trying to monetize it with his own paid service, but he was basically working for free to make his competitors better. Yeah, I can see why he wanted to delete it, but it would have been nice to at least keep up like all the historical commit history, because sure, remove your commits, but I actually contributed a few rules. What about my commits? Well, okay, what about my commits? Because if I made contributions, I probably had a fork, and I never deleted it. It's still there. It's just out of date. You can see the last commit was from 3 years ago. So at least I had what I wrote, but I thought it'd be nice to have everything up to the point where Wappalizer got deleted. And so I already knew that, in theory, my fork is the same repository as the original Wappalizer repo. So if I can just find the commit hash, the last one that was published before it got deleted, then that should exist in my repo somewhere. So to find that commit hash, there's this cool website you've never heard of before called archive.org, and you can just put in the URL, and yeah, there we go. We got a commit hash in red. And then going to my fork, that's the most recent commit in blue. At the top, that is the URL to see the state of my repo at my latest commit. And then all I have to do is just swap out that commit hash for the Wappleizer commit hash, and there we go. That's not me, that is the original author Wappleizer. So there we go, we've got the code for Wappleizer, except you know, that URL at the bottom is kind of long. I don't want to have to bookmark it. And normally when you work with Git repos, you clone them to your computer. And if I clone this, it's not going to have this commit hash. So what can I do about that? Let's talk a bit more about Git branches, because branches, while they are, I guess, logically a list of commits, they're not actually a list of commits, because each commit knows which commit came before it. And so a branch just needs to have a pointer to the most recent commit in the branch. And then you just check the one before that, etc. You have the whole history. And then whenever you make a new commit, it just pushes the head of that branch up one. So what I want to do is I want to take my commit hash from down there and just go forward in history and see if I can sync it up with Wappleizer. And that's actually super straightforward. So I have to clone my fork of the repo, and then when you do a clone, it's only going to give you the hashes that are part of the branches in your fork view of the repository. So I had to explicitly ask the GitHub server for the full commit hash that I found earlier, because it didn't push it during the clone. And then I can just turn around and say, okay, git push origin, set this commit to be the head of master. And there we go. I go to just my fork page, and it's there. That's all the up-to-date Wappleizer code. I mean, obviously, it's been a few years, so it's now 2 years ago instead of 3 years ago. But, you know, this is practical. I really got some use out of this. But there's more fun you can do with this property. And I did kind of promise something in the title of my talk. So let's talk about Nintendo. You know who they are. You probably know they are very litigious. You may have caught some headlines last year about 2 high-profile takedowns of Switch emulators. This will talk about Yuzu, which was the one that happened earlier in the year. That's what these headlines are about. And when I saw these news articles, I thought, okay, I mean, that's sad. I kind of care about game preservation, but I don't play Switch games, so it didn't matter to me so much. But I completely forgot. I'll blame it on ADHD, I guess. I actually had a fork of Yuzu just sitting around. I don't know why. I never contributed anything, but it just sat there. And so, surprise, surprise, I got an email from GitHub. They're like, hey, we got a DMCA takedown notice for your repo. And I thought, okay, that's fine. I was just going to delete it, but it turns out that if I looked at the email again, they actually said that I could make requested changes. And I was like, okay, well, what would requested changes be? You know, the Wappleizer thing I did, I basically took a commit down here and push it up forward in history. What if I just, you know, did the reverse and rewound history to the first commit ever? Because then I would just have like a README file and nothing else, and there technically wouldn't be any emulation code in there. So why not try that, right? Just to find the first commit, I run git log -- reverse, I get a commit hash, and then I do the same command as before, basically. Just I give it the commit hash, :master. I have to add this -- force, because normally Git will say this is a terrible idea. Why do you want to do this? And because it's theoretically a destructive action. So yeah, I do that, do a push, and I go to my fork, and there we go. There's just the README, nothing else. But I did have to check. I did have the commit hash from earlier, so I checked the URL for that, and the code was still in there. But I can't do anything about that. I did the best I could, and I mean, GitHub is going to know what I did, but I pretended I didn't know that. I just said, hey, as requested, the repository no longer has any commits referencing Nintendo hardware or software. And they said, okay, thanks for letting us know. We will reach out when we're done. And so this was a long 24 hours, just kind of like, they're going to figure this out. But no, they said, you know, thanks for letting us know you made changes. And so I was patting myself on the back, like, I can't believe I pulled a fast one on GitHub. That's really cool. And so yeah, that's how the story ends, is basically they went to Nintendo, and they're like, hey, James made changes, and Nintendo's like, okay, yeah, so we need to delete Yuzu and every single fork. Actually, all the forks but James's, because just James's is fine. Now, I don't know why I thought they would care, but I didn't actually show you the DMCA takedown notices, just some of the emails, and I don't have to, because in the interest of transparency, GitHub publishes all the DMCA notices and counter notices that they receive, and they put it all up in a central place for the public to see. You might call it a repository. It has a fork button. Maybe you see where this is going, because my manager did. And he was like, hey, please stop. And at first I thought, like, okay, man, let me have some fun. Like, this is, but I mean, I had to check. Turns out Nintendo, their office, you can drive to my desk within 30 minutes. So maybe I don't want to poke the bear, right? So I'll make it up to you, right? I did promise some DMCA shenanigans. So let's go back a few more years. In 2020, the RAAA submitted a takedown notice for YouTube DL, which is a tool. You probably know what it does. It downloads stuff from YouTube and other sites. And they alleged that it was bypassing copy protection, which is not true, but GitHub legally had to comply, and that was not a very popular move, but they had to. And so there were lots of discourse on Twitter, et cetera, about that, but some maverick out there decided to take it upon themselves to push the entirety of YouTube DL's commit history to the DMCA repo, which is probably the funniest possible reaction you can have to a DMCA takedown. Pretty based. Now, a month later, GitHub did reinstate the repository, and they even made a big old blog post about it, saying, like, yes, we're standing up for developers. We have a whole new process to evaluate DMCA takedowns based on circumvention. They even announced a legal defense fund, and that's cool. But more importantly, that means I can replicate their work, and it won't be breaking IP law. So, how do you do that? It's again really simple. You just, assuming you already forked the DMCA repo, and you also have a copy of YouTube DL, you just change the remote URL and you push. You have to use -- force again. And there you go. There's YouTube DL in my fork of the DMCA repo. But you start with the commit hash URL, swap out the username, and there we go. It's in GitHub's. Now, of course, I was done with this, so I figured I might as well delete my fork, and it's still there. I can't get rid of it because it turns out the deleted commits aren't deleted. They just get hidden. And so this is kind of like a tool for bulletproof file hosting, maybe. Like, I didn't have to upload legal source code. This could have been Switch emulation code. This could have been anything. This could have been really any public repository. You can hide as long as you're okay with having to find the commit hash or just link it, you can hide anything you want, any public repository, as anyone. Because of commit authorship. Because commits all have an author name and email address. You can view this in Git or in GitHub. You can add that patch to the URL to see it. And even for users that don't have a commit, there's this default this default email address you can use. And GitHub will match users to commits by email address, and you can pick whatever you like. So my name is Linus Torvalds, and that's my email address. And Linus made a commit in the WSL repo where he removed all the bad code. And just to clarify, that is his actual GitHub account. Not a fake one. And I mean, I've got another story for you. Did you know that Tim Sweeney of Epic Games accidentally committed a Fortnite V-Bucks generator to an Epic Games repository? It's definitely not malware. You should definitely try it. Got another story for you, actually. So Vitalik Buterin of Ethereum fame actually added this little Easter egg into an Ethereum repository, and you know that it's actually him because this repository is archived. So I didn't just commit this last night. Just to say, like, hey, thanks for exploring the code. Click on this link for a small reward. It's definitely not a phishing link. Yeah, I think phishing is an opportunity possibly here. I don't know if it would work for a general audience, but maybe it would do well in certain verticals where people think they know computers but really don't. So like gaming, blockchain, vibe coding, that kind of a thing. But how do you find these commit hashes, right? Like, how do you see like what stuff people have hidden in places? You can't really brute force these hashes because they're really long, and that would take forever, and GitHub would ban you before you even got close. But a fun fact about Git and GitHub, they also support this thing called short hashes, where as long as you provide enough characters that no other commit starts with those characters, it'll just figure it out for you. And you can indeed brute force 4 alphanumeric characters. It's not that bad. And the secret scanner tool, TruffleHog, has a built-in mode to do this. But to try this out, we need an example. So if you work for AMD, please don't hurt me. Back in August, they accidentally committed some confidential source code to one of their open source repos. And they went ahead and they did the right thing. They rewrote history to remove those commits. But as we know, commits don't get deleted. So to find that, it's actually pretty straightforward using TruffleHog. There's a GitHub experimental subcommand. You run it in object discovery mode. You give it the repo. And you just let it run. It brute forces short hashes and tries to find the long ones. The time depends on how many commits are in the repo. And for Fidelity FX SDK specifically, for some reason, there's only like 7 public commits. But AMD rewrites the hell out of their history. And so a full scan takes like 200 hours. But I got super lucky because TruffleHog, as it works through this list, it will build out this text file that shows you the commit hashes it's found so far. And would you believe that the hash I was looking for was number 3 in the list? So it only took like a few hours, and there we go. That little internal folder you see is how you know this is internal confidential proprietary source code. And they can't do anything about it. It's just there forever. I don't know what to tell you. Now, everything I've shown you so far you can reproduce, except for this. And that's just because TruffleHog is a little bit too smart. Object discovery mode doesn't flag commits that normal mode can find. It makes sense because brute forcing is super expensive. And TruffleHog can actually scan pull requests. It's one of the cool things it can do. And the reason why it can do this is because GitLab and GitHub actually publish refs for the pull requests. You can look at a whole list of refs by just running git ls-remote. That's an example right there. And so if any commit is in a pull request, object discovery mode won't flag it. And you can't find that commit through object discovery mode because someone thought it would be funny if they made a pull request to add the commit back in. So I guess moral of the story is if you're looking for secrets and juicy information, right? Like API keys you can revoke. You can't really revoke source code. You should definitely check the pull request before anything else. I guess I have that in there just to point out that it's not their commit. So in summary, 2 quirks. GitHub forks are all the same repository as the upstream, and GitHub doesn't delete commits. So some shenanigans you can do with that. You can make hidden commits anywhere as anyone. You can do that for piracy, trolling, malware, phishing, more creative things like CI/CD compromises, I guess. You can also find deleted commits and secrets by brute forcing short hashes. So some takeaways, I guess, is you might want to check your threat model, because if the risk of you accidentally committing something that you cannot remove without nuking your repo and every other fork of it, if that's not something, if that's not a risk you can accept, you may want to reconsider using GitHub. And definitely, I've heard of people using this trick for bug bounties and stuff. So have at it, but have fun responsibly. I am not over time. That's cool. Anyway, I will open the floor to questions.
Do you know if you delete your account, your commits will go away?
My understanding, so what would happen is it would delete your repository. And if a repository gets deleted, the upstream repository is the oldest fork. So no.
Do other Git forges behave in the same way, or is this specifically a GitHub quirk?
From what I can tell, this is, I wanted to look, but I ran out of time because of ADHD, but I'm assuming it's just a GitHub specific thing because Trouble Security, this is something that's been publicly known. Trouble Security wrote a few blog posts about it, and I feel like a security team trying to give this a whole scary vulnerability class name would try to see if it works for other Git forges as well. So I'm assuming it doesn't. Maybe that's something to double check.
So I was under the impression, and maybe you just proved this wrong, that GitHub support could, if you had GitHub Enterprise, actually fully delete a commit from history. But is that just fundamentally not possible?
I was hoping you wouldn't ask that question. So technically, it should be feasible. Git itself has tools to do that. I've just, in practice, I've never ever seen it. I don't know if that's something specific to enterprise or not. I guess really the thing is, like, I've never seen it happen. And so if you want to just throw up some illegal file somewhere in someone's repo, like, it's not going to get removed unless someone happens to find it and pisses off Nintendo or GitHub enough. But yeah.
How likely do you think it is that GitHub will find this video and try to take it down in some way? Like fix the solution, the repository.
I think they should fix it. I think this is something that I understand why they do it, but I think it has some unintended consequences. I would like to say I would never do a cybercrime. So just so you know, I think this isn't that they document, and it's something that's been covered so many times. They've probably gotten a million duplicates to the bug bounty because of this. So this is something that they're either stuck with or they've doubled down on. So I don't think this will change anytime soon. But please, GitHub, if you see this, prove me wrong. I mean, it is fun to play with, but still, it's...
Going once, going twice. Sold to James. Your time is given back. Thank you, James.